Akira asked Alpha if, while he was there practicing with his scanner, he could also pick up a few relics along the way. Alpha replied that she didn't mind, but there wasn't anything valuable left in the ruins. Still, it would be good training. Akira smiled at this, and Alpha then informed him Elena and Sarah were there, pointing at their direction. Akira revved up and drove toward them. Elena noticed him first, and Sarah greeted him, curious about what brought him to such a well-picked ruin. Akira explained that it was the perfect spot to train with his scanner. Sarah agreed, and Elena added that they were also there for training, but not for themselves. They were helping some other people out, as that was their current job. Suddenly, a truck approached, and out came Katsuya and his group. Yumina said they should do well today so they wouldn't need any more babysitting. Irie chimed in, saying they'd finally be full-fledged hunters after this. Katsuya then noticed someone standing with Elena and Sarah. He recognized Akira from the other day and wondered what he was doing with them. Then it hit him. Wasn't Akira the guy who took on that emergency mission alone and survived? Back with Akira, he commented that this ruin felt different from Kuzuhara, even though they were both from the old world. Alpha explained that Higuraka was from a different era. When Akira asked what she meant, Alpha elaborated, saying the term, old world, encompassed a long stretch of history. It was a cycle of civilizations collapsing and being rebuilt. Even Kugamayama, Akira's hometown, might be called Kugamayama City ruins, in another 100 years. Akira was amazed by this newfound knowledge, but Alpha quickly snapped him back to reality, finding the perfect spot to begin his training. She instructed him to use his scanner to explore the ruins on his own. Akira complained that it was easy for her to say, but he didn't have a clue how to use the thing. Alpha, ever helpful, said she'd bring up the manual so he could put his reading skills to the test, leaving him to figure it out himself. Akira, not thrilled but determined, agreed since there weren't any tough monsters around. Giving it a shot, he activated the scanner, and suddenly, it was displaying all sorts of information. One marker appeared on top of a building. He squinted, trying to figure out what it meant, but before he could, Alpha interrupted, warning him about a monster lurking in the alley to his left. She continued, casually mentioning another monster hiding in the wall to his right, just above him. Akira groaned, pointing out that he was supposed to be doing this alone. Alpha quickly retorted that he should handle threats before she even needed to tell him. Reluctantly, Akira agreed and, not long after, spotted a monster before Alpha could give him a heads up. Alpha couldn't resist commenting that he barely noticed it in time. Akira realized just how tricky it was, riding his motorbike, spotting threats, and shooting all at once. There was no choice but to keep practicing until he could do it all on his own. Then, as he was riding along, something made him stop. He noticed a massive hole in one of the buildings. Akira asked Alpha about it, confused. Weren't all the monsters here supposed to be weak? Alpha agreed that Akira was right about the monsters being weak, but pointed out that their information might be outdated, and there were no guarantees. So, it was best for him to stay on his toes. Meanwhile, over with Katsuya's group, Elena told them to explore the ruins however they liked. Although she doubted they'd find any valuable relics, their searching methods would still be evaluated. She added that while the monsters here didn't pose much danger, life had a funny way of throwing curveballs, so staying vigilant was essential. Afterward, they'd give them the results of their evaluation. With that, the trio took off at full speed. Elena hadn't expected to bump into Akira, which was a surprise. Sarah agreed and mentioned that Akira's bike probably wasn't a rental, though she wasn't entirely sure. Elena thinks that what Sarah said was right. He also bought a scanner. It just meant that he did well for himself in the fight for the city. Akira have been working hard too, huh? Elena was impressed, joking that if they weren't careful, Akira might surpass them soon. Sarah chuckled and agreed, adding that she still wanted to stay ahead of him for a bit longer. Akira then stumbled upon a large mansion, thinking it could hold some valuable relics. Alpha wasn't as optimistic but said it would be excellent scanner practice, at least. So, Akira decided to check it out, but inside, it was completely barren. Alpha remarked that it had probably been picked clean by countless hunters who all thought the same thing as Akira. As they moved further inside, another room turned out to be just as empty. Disappointed, Akira was about to head back when Alpha noticed something unusual and told him to enter the next room. She explained that there appeared to be a secret door, likely leading to a basement. Akira checked it out, curious, and asked how she spotted it. Alpha, sounding proud, mentioned that her superior processing power had analyzed the data from his scanner. Akira, slightly amused by her self-congratulatory tone, opened the secret door, revealing a dark entrance. Holding a flashlight in his mouth, Akira descended the ladder. When he reached the bottom, all that greeted him was another empty room. Alpha apologized, suggesting someone else must have already found it and cleared everything out. Akira didn't seem too bothered, even thinking there might be another hidden room somewhere. But Alpha, usually able to detect everything, found no signs of anything else. If she couldn't find it, it probably wasn't there. Akira glanced around, thinking he might spot some light shining through a crack, only to realize that wouldn't work underground. Just then, Alpha chimed in, telling him the effort wasn't wasted. Akira, confused, asked what she had found. Alpha highlighted something in augmented reality for him, showing a mark drawn in clear, glowing paint. Akira's scanner had barely picked it up, even at max sensitivity. He asked what kind of basement this was, but since he was already there, he figured he might as well try it. Akira stood where he was supposed to, and suddenly, a woman dressed as a maid appeared in front of him. He asked Alpha what was going on, but she replied that nothing was happening. Akira, clearly unnerved, told her there was a lady standing right in front of him. Alpha, now alarmed, immediately activated his suit, pulling Akira away from the strange woman. Demanding an explanation, Akira wanted to know why Alpha had done that, but Alpha was the one firing off questions, asking if he had a headache, felt nauseous, or can still think clearly. Alpha asked if Akira could still hear her and if he could still see the mysterious woman. Akira, confused, assured her he was fine. Relieved, Alpha asked if the woman was still visible, but Akira replied that she had disappeared. He then demanded an explanation. Alpha explained that Akira had narrowly escaped death. When he asked for clarification, Alpha reminded him that the me he sees as a form of augmented reality. Akira recalled this, and Alpha continued, explaining that the woman he saw was similar. To perceive such entities, one must receive their data. People known as old domain users can do this. And apparently, Akira was one of them. Akira, perplexed, wondered what that meant for him. Alpha elaborated. If he absorbed too much data, his brain wouldn't be able to process it, which could result in instant death. Fortunately, his compatibility allowed him to handle her data, but if he had been incompatible with that mysterious lady's transmission. Akira interrupted, asking what would have happened. Alpha answered bluntly. He would have dropped dead the moment he saw her. Naturally, Akira asked if Alpha could do anything about it. Snapping into her AI mode, Alpha replied, stating that to prevent fatal damage to Akira's life support systems, she could act as a relay for incoming information from network sources. Akira, not fully grasping the tech talk, gave Alpha the go-ahead anyway, and she registered his consent. Returning to her usual self, Alpha reassured him that with the filter she had set up, he should be reasonably safe. Akira, still curious, asked if this was more of the red tape she had mentioned before. Would he encounter many situations like this? Alpha confirmed, advising him not to ask for too many details. When Akira asked why, she cheekily responded that it would take a century to explain everything, but if he really insisted, she'd try. Akira, wisely, decided to skip the deep dive into AI mechanics. With his permission, Alpha activated the relay, and together they re-engaged with the mysterious woman. This time, the woman greeted Akira, asking if he'd like to register as a new user. Akira politely declined but attempted to ask her a few questions. Before he could get answers, the woman vanished into thin air. Baffled, Akira turned to Alpha for an explanation. Alpha guessed that the woman might disappear if he rejected her offer, but they could try getting her to transmit data to Akira's terminal directly. Akira stepped back into the marked area and asked the woman if she could send her data to his terminal. She agreed and thanked him for using their services, but Alpha found that no data was coming through. It wasn't in a format Akira's terminal could handle. Alpha suggested that although risky, they could try retrieving the data through Akira himself, assuring him that she'd take every precaution. Akira, ever the risk taker, agreed, reasoning that danger came with the job of being a hunter. Alpha warned him to be alert to any strange sensations and to get out if things felt off. After a tense moment, Alpha informed Akira that the transfer was complete, and all was safe. Akira, surprised, asked why he hadn't felt anything. Alpha explained that she'd handled the entire transfer, keeping him out of it while she directly received the data. Curious about the lady's true nature, Akira asked what she was, but Alpha playfully deflected, saying it was a long story for another time. Meanwhile, Katsuya's group continued their exploration. Elena and Sarah kept an eye on them as they moved through the ruins. Two members of the group entered a building to search for relics while the third stood guard outside. Their strategy was simple. If they encountered any monsters, they would abandon their search and regroup to take it down. They rotated roles frequently to avoid anyone getting too stressed, or too complacent. Katsuya's tactics seemed solid to Elena, but it was all textbook relic hunting. He didn't have high hopes, and sure enough, everything they found was practically junk. Yumina, ever the voice of reason, reminded him that Sarah and Elena had already warned them the place had been picked clean. Katsuya sighed, wishing they could borrow some high-end scanners like they used in the Kuzuhara ruins. Yumina agreed. Those scanners could even pick up old domain AR data. Speaking of which, she brought up how Katsuya once mentioned seeing something weird in AR back then. She asked what it was all about. Katsuya, clearly flustered, mumbled something about corrupted data making things look strange and quickly changed the topic. He asked Yumina to call Irie over instead. As Yumina stepped out, Katsuya thought back to what he saw. It wasn't his imagination. There had been an AR girl floating beside him, and even though she spoke, he couldn't understand her. Then, poof, she vanished. He definitely couldn't tell Yumina and Irie about the naked AR ghost girl. They'd never let him live it down. Their bags were loaded with relics now. Katsuya asked Yumina how much she thought they'd make from the haul. Yumina shot him a calming look and reminded him that this was just a training exercise. The value of their finds didn't really matter. He shouldn't stress over it. He knew she was right, but before he could complain, Yumina cut him off and told him to get moving. For Katsuya, though, this much wasn't enough. Ordinary success wasn't enough. Average strength would only lead to an average death. Memories of his past failures burned in his mind. He needed more power. Enough to save his comrades, enough to save everyone. As Katsuya was lost in thought, something clicked. There was one more thing. At the time, he'd thought it was just a glitch, but now, he was sure. If he could focus his scanner on that area and crank up the sensitivity, He found it. His heart raced as he told Yumina and Irie to scan the spot he was pointing at. When they did, their faces went pale with shock. A gluttonous crocodile was lurking in the ruins. They wondered how on earth it got there. Glutton crocs weren't supposed to be in Higuraku, but there it was. For Irie, this was a terrifying surprise, and she immediately recognized the danger they were in. Yumina praised Katsuya for spotting it, suggesting they could avoid the beast entirely. But then Katsuya, with a determined look, declared that they should kill it. Yumina and Irie exchanged shocked glances. Yumina asked if Katsuya was serious about hunting the gluttonous crocodile. Katsuya explained that since the beast hadn't noticed them yet, they could hit it hard and fast, giving them a chance to win. Yumina considered this and admitted that maybe they could, but questioned why they should take such a risk. Katsuya looked down and reluctantly agreed, admitting that maybe he just didn't have what it took. He apologized and suggested they leave, but Yumina sighed and said she'd check with Elena first. After some discussion, Yumina managed to get Elena on board with taking down the croc. Katsuya asked if she was sure. Yumina said that if he wanted to back out, he could take it up with Elena himself. Without warning, Katsuya grabbed Yumina, thanking her with an enthusiasm that made her visibly embarrassed. He apologized for deciding on his own but insisted he needed her help to bring down the croc. Irie chimed in, saying she was in too, and with that, the group was set. Sarah asked Elena if she was really okay with this, concerned that the group was relying on their backup too much. Elena explained that this was a test. If they refused, Yumina would have known that they were over their head. She admired Yumina's guts, and now Sarah understood why. Yumina told the team she had arranged for Elena and Sarah to back them up but to pretend they were far away. By pretend, it was clear they were nearby. Irie remarked that the longer they waited, the more respect they'd lose. Yumina agreed, which meant they had to step in fast. If Elena and Sarah thought they weren't ready, they'd swoop in immediately. Katsuya knew it was now or never. He double-checked their equipment and, much to his relief, didn't see any heavy armor on the croc. Yumina warned that glutton crocs adopt traits from what they eat, so if this one had snacked on any tanks recently, they were in for trouble. Katsuya instructed them to use their strongest ammo and not hold back. With a countdown from 5, they opened fire, determined to win. The first volley of shots caught the croc by surprise, sending it into a frenzy as it charged toward them. They kept firing, not giving it a moment to recover. Yumina remarked that it was still standing, and boy, was it tough. Katsuya reassured her they could still take it down. From atop a nearby building, Elena and Sarah observed. Sarah asked if they should help, noticing the group was starting to struggle. Elena decided to give them a little more time. The croc was getting closer, but the group unleashed another barrage of firepower. Just when they thought they had it beat, the croc regenerated, catching them completely off guard. The beast was only meters away now, and Sarah readied her rifle, carefully aiming at the monster. Katsuya began doubting himself. Was this it for him? Could he really not turn the tide, no matter how hard he tried? Akira had won his fight and returned stronger. Katsuya wanted that power, craved it. If only he could make a difference, to have that kind of strength in his own hands. Then, suddenly, she appeared again, the AR girl from the Kuzuhara ruins. Just like Alpha, she floated beside Katsuya, wrapping her arms around his neck. In an instant, one of Katsuya's bullets pierced through the croc's head, triggering a chain reaction as it ricocheted off other bullets, taking the beast down for good before it could regenerate again. The team stood there, confused. Did they really kill it? Elena and Sarah praised the group for their impressive work, noting they'd report the results to Druncam. They also advised the team to head back home before they ran into any more trouble. The group thanked Elena and Sarah for their support as they drove off toward home. Sarah turned to Elena, asking if Akira had made it back safely with all the gluttonous crocs around. Elena decided to give him a call just to check. Akira picked up while riding his motorcycle, apologizing because he was a bit busy. Understanding that, Elena kept it brief and warned him that they had run into a gluttonous crocodile, so she wanted to make sure he was aware in case he was still in the ruins. Akira thanked them and promised to be careful. Elena reminded him to call if he ran into any trouble and said goodbye. Even though they called just to warn him, Akira was already deep into a fight with another gluttonous crocodile. This one was even more dangerous, equipped with a turret, far more deadly than the one Katsuya's group had faced. While speeding on his motorcycle, Akira took aim and shot at the monster's gun, which was fortunately the croc's last line of offense. Now, all he had to do was finish the fight, but Akira doubted whether he could really kill it. Every time he shot off one of the creature's heads, another one grew back, leaving no end in sight. Alpha chimed in, suggesting Akira use the CWH proprietary ammo. Akira hesitated, reminding her that it was reserved for emergencies only. Alpha argued that if this situation didn't count as an emergency, nothing did. She told him to load the special ammo and head for the street up ahead. Despite Akira's efforts, the monster refused to let up its chase. Akira quickly ditched his bike and readied his rifle. As the beast bore down on him, Akira fired. This time, he managed to blast through both heads at once with a shot so powerful it pierced straight through the creature. The gunfire echoed through the empty ruin, and at long last, the croc went down for good. Akira, admiring the destruction, couldn't help but praise the punch that special ammo packed. No wonder it was so expensive. Still, between the CWH and the AP ammo, this fight had cost him more than just some bullets. It was practically his entire paycheck. Alpha reassured him, saying she had signed him up for a generic extermination job, which would at least help cover part of the bill. She also reminded him that the trip to the basement earlier had been worthwhile, so he shouldn't feel too down about the cost. With that, they called it a day and decided to head back. Back in Kugamayama City, Sarah asked Elena about the report. Elena replied that she'd given the team some well-deserved credit without overhyping them. Still, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about how they managed to kill the croc, even if it was just a lucky shot. Sarah then asked about Druncam's recruitment offer. She knew they were keeping it on hold for now, but wondered what Elena thought about it. Elena answered honestly, admitting she was torn. On one hand, they could rely on Druncam's support if they signed on. It might even help with Sarah's nanomachine bills. But Sarah knew it would come at the cost of the freedom they were used to. Elena hated to put this on Sarah but told her the decision was hers to make. Either way, she wouldn't complain. Sarah thanked Elena for being so considerate. Meanwhile, back at Akira's hotel, Akira was still puzzled by the mysterious woman in the maid outfit. He asked Alpha who she was. Alpha explained that the place was basically a virtual temp agency. Akira was confused, wondering what the point was in hiring someone who wasn't really there. Akira questioned Alpha about the purpose of hiring someone who's not really there. Alpha explained that many jobs only require seeing, hearing, and answering questions. She pointed out that Akira already had proof in front of him, and Akira, although hesitant, accepted her point. Alpha then shifted gears and warned him to keep the encounter with the maid a secret, especially since she never told him he was an old domain user. She explained that the less Akira knew, the safer he was from exposure. Now that Akira knew, he had to keep it quiet, or risk becoming a test subject, with an autopsy waiting to happen. That sent a chill down Akira's spine. Maybe ignorance was bliss, or was knowing better than being caught off guard. Either way, he longed for the days when his biggest concern was being stuck in a well. Alpha, sensing his worry, reassured him that staying under the radar was easier than he thought. All he needed to do was keep his mouth shut, and she would handle the rest. With that pep talk over, she moved on to the real prize. She mentioned that the maid belonged to Lion's Tail Inc., a relic of the old world that still had some operational facilities. Through their network, Alpha had found coordinates to all their installations and branches, meaning a potential treasure hunt lay ahead. Akira's eyes lit up at the thought of undiscovered ruins, imagining the wealth of relics they might find. Alpha confirmed his suspicions, saying if they followed those coordinates, they'd stumble upon a treasure trove. Akira was ready to head out, brimming with excitement, but Alpha quickly grounded him. There was no way he'd haul all those relics on his motorcycle. His enthusiasm deflated. He'd have to wait until he could afford a car. But even with the disappointment, the promise of future treasure kept his spirits up. It was a goal to work toward, and that would keep him motivated. Meanwhile, at Druncam HQ, the sounds of gunfire echoed throughout the training center. Inside, Katsuya was hitting bullseyes, showing definite improvement compared to his last attempts. But even though his aim had gotten better, it was clear that the mysterious AR girl was the reason for his success. Just who was she? Inside the Druncam facility, Katsuya and his team were summoned. Arabe congratulated them on their progress, informing them they would now operate without a supervisor. He introduced Mizuha, their new point of contact, who warmly greeted them. With that, Arabe exited the room. Elena and Sarah had turned down Druncam's recruitment offer, but at least they wouldn't have to deal with those rookie issues anymore. Arabe joked that this should make Shikarabe less cranky, and then he left. In the room, Mizuha took Katsuya's hand, brimming with enthusiasm. She praised his glowing report and expressed her eagerness to provide the best opportunities for him. She even mentioned lining up municipal jobs, which she couldn't wait to discuss with him. Katsuya felt a bit awkward and asked if they could make their own decisions. Mizuha seemed to understand but then suggested they first assist with the temporary base they were building. Irie and Yumina, observing the exchange, sensed something was amiss. Meanwhile, Akira was gearing up to help build a forward base. Alpha explained that his role was to rescue anyone attacked by monsters at the site. Akira, already aware, set off to gather his work terminal. Fate, however, seemed to be playing tricks on him as he drew number 14 again. On his motorcycle, he zoomed from one distress call to another, unable to catch a break. Arriving at a distress site, Akira helped clear out the monsters. He repeated this process several times, assisting hunters in need. As exhaustion set in, Akira popped some meds, only to find them less effective than expected. Alpha explained these were cheap capsules, far inferior to old-world medicines. He'd need to take a mountain of them to feel any effect, which is probably why hunters overdo it. Alpha advised finishing one more rescue before taking a break. Akira used his motorcycle to navigate into a building but was halted by Alpha. Akira asked why did she told him to stop. Was it because there's too much rubble to drive through? She informed him that there were too many monsters, not just rubble, and used her AR system to pinpoint their locations. The monsters were Urata scorpions, masters of camouflage. Realizing his oversight, Akira fired at the scorpions, which proved to be tough opponents. Alpha noted their resilience and their trick of playing dead. He needed to eliminate them thoroughly before moving on. The Urata scorpions emerged and attacked Akira, but he dispatched them quickly. After clearing them out, he moved to another location and successfully rescued 3 hunters. The 3 hunters were happy that they were saved. Alpha commented that it's a good thing they made it on time. Akira were pleased with this because he can finally rest. Exhausted, he reported back, intending to return to the base. However, Sector 4 HQ refused his request to return, instructing him to send the rescued targets back alone and proceed with his next mission. Akira argued, pointing out he had just fought through a Urata scorpion-infested building. He couldn't undertake another mission without resupplying. The HQ staff murmured something urgently, prompting Akira to inquire about the issue. They asked if the building was a Urata scorpion nest. Not knowing for sure, Akira only confirmed it was crawling with them. The HQ then hastily rescinded their previous order, directing him to return to the base immediately. Akira used the speaker to relay the message to everyone, instructing them to head back to the base. However, one of the hunters insisted on guarding them all the way. Alpha then advised Akira to either abandon them immediately or order them to the base as quickly as possible. A swarm of Urata scorpions suddenly drew near, and Akira shouted for everyone to run. He fired at the scorpions, trying to slow them down and urge the hunters to make a hasty escape. As he shot, he muttered curses, noting that AP ammo wasn't cheap but was effective enough to take down the scorpions in a single shot. Looking back, Akira noticed the hunters had halted. Alpha explained that more scorpions had circled ahead to trap them. Akira hopped onto his bike and sped toward the encirclement. As he drew closer, it was clear they were completely surrounded and struggling to fight back. Akira accelerated and used his bike to slide and smash into the scorpions, clearing out large numbers of them with each pass. He then leapt off the bike and fired his rifle. Alpha reminded him that he was out of AP ammo and needed to switch rifles. With his last AP magazine spent, Akira switched to his two rifles loaded with regular ammo and continued firing. He jumped into the fray, landing hard on one of the scorpions and crushing it. He kicked and shot at the remaining scorpions, but he was running low on normal ammo. He asked Alpha what to do next. Alpha presented two options: attempt melee combat or abandon the hunters and head for the base. Akira chose to hold out as long as he could, but Alpha detected a car approaching. Relief washed over Akira as the backup finally arrived, gunning down dozens of scorpions. The man in the car instructed them to get in, and Alpha told Akira to leave it to him and head out. Akira agreed, and he drove off, unaware that the backup was actually Katsuya. Back at the HQ, a staff member greeted Akira and took his terminal. The staffer mentioned that clearing the area had stirred up a massive scorpion nest and asked if Akira wanted to join the operation to resecure the base's surroundings. Remembering what just happened earlier, he declined. Alpha commented that it's finally over. Akira agreed. Although it's exhausting, he can finally rest now. While walking, he noticed hunters enjoying sandwiches and laughing, which made his stomach growl. They had set up food stands, and Alpha asked if he wanted to grab a bite while they were still there. Akira saw that a hot sandwich cost 980 orum, which seemed steep but possibly just wasteland pricing. Alpha asked if he wanted to skip it, but Akira had already waited in line, noting that the place seemed popular. The girl at the stand greeted him, and Akira ordered a sandwich. She pointed to a scanner, indicating he should place his card there for payment. Confused, Akira realized card meant his hunter ID. To his surprise, the girl behind the stand was Cheryl, who was delighted to run into him. Akira was puzzled about why Cheryl was there, and she thanked him for his purchase. He asked what she was doing out there, and was surprised to see Katsuragi greet him. Inside Katsuragi's truck, Katsuragi mentioned that he hadn't sold relics since their last transaction. He reminded Akira that he had agreed to help Cheryl in exchange for his finds and questioned the reason behind Akira's change in focus. Akira explained that he was currently concentrating on monster hunting. He added that he used to hunt relics in Kuzuhara and implied that Katsuragi should be aware of the situation there now. Katsuragi, understanding Akira's predicament, couldn't really blame him but reminded Akira not to forget their deal. Katsuragi seemed to ponder something, realizing that Akira hadn't abandoned Cheryl but had merely shifted his business elsewhere. This was good news for Katsuragi, who was investing in Cheryl with the expectation that Akira would eventually sell relics to him. Akira then inquired about Cheryl's presence. She explained that thanks to Akira and Mr. Katsuragi, she had the opportunity to work various jobs. Katsuragi seized the moment to order another sandwich. Cheryl cheerfully took his plate, promising to bring one for Akira as well. Katsuragi took the chance to ask Akira if he had noticed Cheryl's transformation and if he had done anything to her. Akira was just as clueless, noting that Cheryl had started acting differently one day without any explanation. Katsuragi mused over this, noting that Cheryl was quite different from when they first met. While this change was beneficial for business, as she now makes a better partner and is good at charming customers, Katsuragi found it intriguing. He revealed that the sandwich shop was actually Cheryl's idea, and it was selling like hotcakes. Akira was surprised to learn that Katsuragi wasn't the one running the shop. Katsuragi admitted that he preferred to stay out of the restaurant business and acknowledged that the shop was entirely Cheryl's venture. Cheryl returned with the sandwiches and a coffee. As Akira bit into his sandwich, he asked if Cheryl was involved in making and selling them, which impressed him. Cheryl thanked him with a smile, saying she couldn't have done it without him and Mr. Katsuragi. Katsuragi leaned in and asked Akira if he was sure he hadn't done anything to influence Cheryl's change. Akira was adamant that he hadn't done anything. Back at his hotel, Akira went straight for a bath. It had been a grueling day, and he described the Urata scorpions as particularly tough. Alpha agreed, noting that someday Akira would need to handle small fry like them with ease. Akira enjoyed his bath, resolved to figure things out eventually. Akira told Shizuka about his ordeal with the Urata scorpions the previous day, and she was incredulous at the sheer number he encountered. Akira agreed, mentioning that his gun, the AAH, barely made a dent. Thankfully, he had his CWH on hand. Shizuka suggested he should consider upgrading his AAH to handle Urata scorpions more effectively. She recommended installing custom parts and switching to overpressure ammo. At that moment, a voice from inside a room in Shizuka's store was heard asking for a moment. The voice sounded familiar, and Akira suspected it was Elena. Shizuka asked Akira to wait a moment and went inside. Elena's voice, filled with shock at hearing Akira was there, could be heard. Shizuka then pushed Elena out of the room and explained that Elena was wearing a B3CSD-powered suit. Unlike Akira's suit, which uses an exoskeleton for support, Elena's suit starts out baggy but shrinks to fit when activated, clinging tightly to her skin. Shizuka asked for Akira's opinion, which made him a bit embarrassed. To him, the suit seemed overly flashy, and he suggested Elena might want to wear something over it. Shizuka, now feeling a bit awkward, dashed back into the room, slamming the door behind her. Akira, shaking off the awkwardness, shifted the topic and asked if Shizuka could recommend some parts for his gun. Later, at Akira's hotel, Alpha informed him that he had received a personal job offer through the Hunter office. Akira was surprised, and Alpha explained that while this was technically good news, the job was rather tricky. In essence, Akira was tasked with exterminating Urata scorpions. Akira immediately refused, but Alpha noted that turning down the offer would put him at odds with the Kugamayama Department of Long-Term Strategy, making him unpopular in the city. Akira considered this and suggested presenting them with demands they would likely refuse, such as paying up front for all CWH, proprietary ammo, or allowing him to retreat whenever he chose. Alpha thought this was a solid plan, as it would make the conditions unreasonable enough for the client to reject, allowing Akira to refuse without angering the city. The next morning, Alpha delivered some bad news. The city approved all of Akira's conditions, leaving him stunned. At the cartridge freak, Akira asked Shizuka how many rounds of CWH, proprietary ammo she could gather for him immediately. Shizuka was taken aback and asked what he was planning to fight. Akira explained that he was stuck with the Urata scorpion extermination job and everything that had happened so far. Shizuka understood the situation. Given the scorpions were likely both powerful and numerous, she agreed to get as much ammo as she could and promised to include additional rounds of his other types of ammunition. Akira thanked her. As Akira prepared to leave, Shizuka hugged him and told him to make sure he come back alive, which Akira reassured that he will. At the Kuzushihara Ruins Urata Scorpion Extermination HQ, a man approached Akira and inquired if he had signed up for the scorpion hunt. Akira confirmed, and though the man noted Akira was still a kid, it didn't matter much to him. He then asked if Akira wanted security or reconnaissance. Akira opted for whichever was easier, which irritated the man. He questioned if Akira was joking, but Akira was dead serious about wanting the easiest and safest job available. The man, looking down on Akira, assigned him to security, claiming he would just need to stand lookout in areas that had already been cleared. Akira was stationed at checkpoint 14 and dismissed. As the man spoke behind Akira's back, disparaging him as spoiled and assuming his record was unimpressive, he took a closer look at Akira's credentials and was taken aback. A gate then opened, and the guard instructed Akira to proceed inside. Akira followed, asking why they were in a basement. As soon as he entered, the gate shut behind him. The room was filled with explosives. One of the guards explained that these bombs served as their insurance. They would detonate them to trap the scorpion swarms before they reached the surface. Akira inquired about their fate if that happened, to which the guard replied that if they did their job, they'd be far away or dead. As expected, Akira thought, and he proceeded down the stairs into the Kuzushihara Ruins underground shopping district. Alpha explained that the hunters working to clear out the scorpions were divided into 3 main teams: reconnaissance, extermination, and security. The recon team maps out the area and locates nests. The extermination team destroys the nests, expands the safe zone, and provides backup, while the security team mostly defends specific points. This role is safer and easier, so it's assigned to hunters who didn't make it into the other 2 teams. Akira then asked if it was all just a cakewalk. It never hurts to ask, he reasoned. Alpha reminded him, though she shouldn't have to, not to let his guard down. He knew this, but he was just relieved that it seemed easier than he had expected. They then arrived at checkpoint 14. Akira noticed something and leapt back. It was a lady in a maid outfit, and he immediately informed Alpha. Despite his retreat, the maid remained. Alpha calmed him down, explaining that she was not an augmented reality projection. Akira was confused, but Alpha clarified that the person was real. Nearby hunters grumbled about another kid and questioned what the HQ was thinking. One remarked that HQ must have considered the area so safe that even children could guard it. Another hunter agreed, noting that they had even sent someone with a maid. A girl commented that Akira was overreacting. The girl suggested to the maid, named Shiori, that she should wear something else. Shiori reassured her that she didn't mind the attention, though it was actually meant for the young miss. Akira then asked the complaining hunters if they were in charge of the area. The man replied that no one was in command. If Akira wanted a babysitter, he should join Katsuya's group. Katsuya seemed surprised to see Akira, but Akira ignored him and walked away. He sat on the floor, removing his backpack. The young miss asked Akira's name, and he replied, Akira. She then asked why he was on his own and invited him to join them. Akira declined, saying he was fine where he was. The girl questioned his refusal, assuming he was trying to avoid work. Akira denied this, stating that he wasn't slacking off and had no plans to. The girl insisted he was lying, pointing out that he had been sitting quietly the whole time. Akira showed her his terminal and explained that he was running wide area scans for threats. The girl, now embarrassed, gritted her teeth and asked for his hunter rank. Akira proudly answered 20. The girl, rank 23, declared that she outranked him and demanded that he stand up and join them. Akira calmly replied that no one had told him to obey higher-ranked hunters, so he didn't have to listen to her. Reina insisted that's how things work, but Katsuya intervened. He explained to Akira that despite Reina's prickly demeanor, she was just concerned for him. He reasoned that he'd be much safer with a larger group if things went wrong. Akira responded coldly, saying they could forget about him if trouble arose and let him fend for himself if necessary, which shocked both Reina and Katsuya. Reina then pulled on Katsuya's arm. Reina declared that if Akira wanted to die alone, it was no concern of hers. Alpha commented on how colorful these characters were, and Akira agreed, betting they had been bickering long before he arrived. At least his contract allowed him to decide when to go solo or cut and run. The assignment might not be as bad as he thought. Alpha considered that they might be troublemakers, but Akira was likely the most dangerous when provoked. She needed to observe him more to understand what drove him. As time passed, no monsters appeared. Katsuya had been staring at Akira for a while, which caught Reina's attention. She asked what was going on, but Katsuya quickly dismissed it as nothing. Two men from earlier whispered about how many relics had turned up in unexplored parts of the tunnels, surprising their companion, who wished he were on the recon team. The other man noted that they couldn't just walk away with relics, as it would breach their contract. He speculated that if he were in their shoes, he'd hide the relics somewhere only he could find. The man smirked, thinking that someone might have left a cache of relics nearby. Reina then noticed the two men leaving and demanded to know where they were going. They claimed they were doing a quick sweep of the perimeter, but Reina insisted they were there to guard, not patrol, and ordered them to stick to their duty. Finding this annoying, the men asked Akira for his opinion. He replied that if they needed a bathroom break, they should make it quick. He warned them that if they were gone too long, he would call HQ to check on them. This response surprised Reina and pleased the men, who admitted they needed a bathroom break. In fact, one could barely hold it in, which enraged Reina. She questioned Akira's thinking, asking how he could let them get away like that. Akira simply stated that he had no authority to stop them and that if she had complaints, she should take them up with HQ. If she wanted Akira to threaten them to make them stay, she should do it herself. He wouldn't stop her. At a loss for words, Reina left, shouting that HQ would hear about everything that happened. Later, she couldn't believe HQ ignored the slackers from earlier. Yumina suggested she give up, and Irie added that the place was so safe HQ didn't care if they slacked off. Reina agreed and asked Katsuya to patrol as well. Katsuya immediately refused, but Reina retorted, saying that why the need to stay put while they don't. Katsuya explained that the checkpoint would be too risky if they all left. He then approached Reina and told her he didn't want to see her acting like the slackers. This embarrassed Reina, who couldn't even meet his gaze. She admitted that Katsuya had beaten her in their mock battle and, since she promised to follow his orders if she lost, she would put up with this for now. Katsuya thanked her, though Yumina and Irie looked displeased. Shiori then joined the conversation, stating that she couldn't approve of their reckless expeditions. She explained that this was a wasteland, a place of extreme danger, fundamentally different from the walled districts. Still brooding over the situation, thought that she might be being fatally naive. Reina, she wished for the respect that Katsuya seemed to command and wondered if this job would ever give her a chance to prove herself. Just then, a device announced that it was HQ calling for checkpoint 14. HQ inquired if there was anything unusual to report. The man at the checkpoint reported that everything was calm, even peaceful. HQ then informed them that checkpoint 15 had come under attack from an area they had previously deemed safe. They suspected that the Scorpions had opened a new route. The man quickly grasped the situation and asked if they wanted them to be on alert for a possible attack at their location as well. HQ replied that wasn't necessary. Instead, they wanted them to form a team to reinvestigate the area. The man said he and his buddy would handle it, but HQ insisted that the job wasn't suited for them and told them to stay at their posts. Reina smirked, thinking it served them right. The man asked who would be sent, given that they only had some inexperienced recruits and their babysitters. HQ responded that Akira, designated as 27, would handle it. HQ continued, stating that Akira could go alone or choose up to 2 others. Hearing this, Akira grabbed his bag, which surprised Katsuya, who watched as Akira prepared to leave. The man then asked why Akira was chosen and if they were sure they weren't thinking of someone else. HQ explained that, based on combat records, 27 was the best choice. The man questioned what Akira had done that was so impressive. HQ revealed that Akira had rescued hunters from an infested building and had single-handedly killed at least 80 Urata scorpions. This information shocked Katsuya. He couldn't believe that Akira had taken down 80 or more Urata scorpions alone. Irie then interjected, noting that Katsuya, numbered 52, had also rescued many hunters and had killed a gluttonous crocodile. Reina added that Katsuya's team had indeed killed a gluttonous crocodile, but this only angered HQ, which retorted that they didn't care about some crocodile because 27 had also killed one, solo. HQ's frustration boiled over as they shouted for everyone to stop nitpicking and not question their orders any further. With that, HQ ended the call, leaving Katsuya speechless. Reina noticed Katsuya's stunned expression and realized she had never seen him like this before. She wondered who this boy named Akira was. But still, this is the chance she have to take. In a reckless decision, Reina told Shiori that they would go after Akira. Akira asked Alpha what he should do next, wondering if he should head directly toward checkpoint 15. Alpha questioned why he suggested that. Akira explained that scorpions fleeing from checkpoint 15 might have left a blood trail leading back to their nest. Alpha commended him for this logical deduction and asked for another reason. Akira guessed that if he encountered a swarm on his way, he could retreat to checkpoint 15 for safety. Alpha confirmed that Akira's second reason was especially sound, reinforcing his suspicion that Alpha also doubted checkpoint 14's safety. Alpha elaborated that with no one on high alert and personnel already bickering among themselves, relying on that group would be akin to walking into a death trap. She advised Akira to proceed without her support, as it would serve as valuable training. Akira questioned why Alpha was included in the training, to which Alpha admitted her scouting abilities had significantly diminished. This revelation shocked Akira, prompting him to ask what she meant. Alpha explained that she struggled to detect threats beneath Kuzusahara as effectively as she could on the surface. Akira inquired about the extent of her impairment, but Alpha only described it as a real doozy, and maintained that it was confidential. Though taken aback, Akira had no choice but to move forward. However, Alpha warned him to wait, as they had company. Looking back, Akira saw Reina and Shiori approaching. Akira asked what they wanted. Reina replied that they were coming with him. Akira insisted they should leave and quickened his pace. Despite his efforts, they trailed behind him. Akira then asked what he needed to do to make them leave, suggesting he could shove a gun in Reina's face. Shiori warned Akira that such an action would lead to unnecessary harm for both sides and advised against it. She recommended reconsidering the approach. If Shiori's warning was accurate, Akira told her to drag Reina back to the checkpoint to avoid a headache. Shiori bowed, stating that respecting Miss Reina's wishes was also part of her duty, so she declined. Alpha advised Akira that arguing would only make matters worse and suggested he simply ignore them. Following Alpha's advice, Akira continued alone, scouting cautiously with every step. Miss Reina then asked Shiori why Akira was moving so slowly. Shiori responded that he must be the cautious type. Miss Reina agreed but questioned their snail-paced progress, noting there were 3 of them. Shiori corrected her, saying there was only one, implying that Akira wasn't relying on them at all. Miss Reina wondered if Shiori meant that Akira doubted their capability. Shiori suggested they should turn back, doubting Miss Reina would gain anything by continuing with Akira. Miss Reina, however, refused to give up and remained stubborn. Shiori took note of this and decided to try convincing Akira. Meanwhile, Akira was investigating for signs of Urata scorpions but found none. He speculated that they might be further ahead. At that moment, Shiori approached Akira, attempting to speak with him. When Akira continued to ignore her, Shiori said something that grabbed his attention. She wanted to hire him as Reina's bodyguard, which surprised both Reina and Akira. Shiori explained that Akira would protect Miss Reina during the scorpion extermination, provided he stayed close enough to assist her, and offered to pay him 5 million orum upon successful completion. Miss Reina interrupted, asking what Shiori was talking about. Shiori clarified that she was hiring additional protection for her because Reina refused to turn back and needed to take extra measures for her safety. Alpha advised Akira to speak up or they'd decide for him. Akira stood up and firmly declared he wasn't taking the job. Shiori responded by saying if the pay didn't satisfy him, she was open to negotiation. But that wasn't the issue. Akira admitted he didn't feel skilled enough to earn the pay. He struggled with the idea of guarding someone else. The reason for hiring him as a guard was his impressive feat of saving hunters from a Urata scorpion swarm solo. While true, Akira had barely made it through, burning through all his ammo and surviving by the skin of his teeth. Reina then asked why he had taken on this extermination job if it was so tough. Akira shouted that he would have declined if he could. However, his client was Kugamayama DLS, and he wondered how he was supposed to turn them down, which left Reina stunned. She continued, questioning if he wasn't actually that strong. Akira confirmed her suspicion. Reina had thought he was special since the HQ had specifically requested him, and Katsuya seemed genuinely impressed. Realizing this was a letdown, Reina felt disheartened. With this new information, Shiori revised her offer. She proposed that Akira support Miss Reina until they returned to the checkpoint, offering him 100,000 orum in advance. Reina asked what Shiori was doing. Shiori explained that if Reina listened to her and left, Shiori would withdraw her offer. However, Shiori already knew Reina wouldn't back down. This left Reina in a tough spot. If she went back now, she'd look foolish. Alpha then advised Akira to accept the offer, reasoning that refusing would only spark another argument. She believed the job was essentially an excuse to avoid conflict while they were with him. Alpha's advice had a point, and because of that Akira agreed. Shiori handed Akira the money and introduced herself. Akira then asked what their next move was. This confused Reina, who asked what he meant. Akira explained that since he was being paid to support her, he would go along with her plan. Reina panicked slightly, realizing she didn't have a plan. Shiori suggested they should stick with their current search plan for the time being. Reina immediately agreed, and so did Akira. He resumed scouting the area, while Reina watched him. She wondered if she had overestimated him earlier. If he was indeed a weakling, how had he managed to kill a gluttonous croc on his own? He didn't seem strong at all. Shiori noticed Reina's preoccupation and asked if something was bothering her. Reina, startled, apologized and said it was nothing. Shiori then thought Reina was fixated on Akira's competence, while it was actually her own skills that were concerning her. Although Reina didn't realize it, She was using Akira as a benchmark for herself. Shiori considered that if Reina continued to scrutinize him, it could lead to further disputes. Deciding this wouldn't do, Shiori took the opportunity to approach Akira and asked for his opinion on Miss Reina's skills. Akira questioned why she was asking him. Shiori explained she wanted an outside perspective and considered it part of the assessment aspect of supporting Miss Reina. Akira mentioned he still wasn't sure what to say and sought Alpha's advice. She suggested treating it as training and figuring it out himself. Alpha believed that a hunter needed to gauge someone's competence at first glance. She also thought Akira could use some practice in negotiating amicably and was confident he'd manage it. Akira resolved to give Shiori an answer. He told her that skill was too vague and requested a reference frame. Shiori acknowledged his point and provided a reference. If he were to hire Miss Reina for a hunt, how much would he be willing to pay her? The reference made things clearer for Akira, and he responded that he wouldn't hire her at all, leaving both Shiori and Reina stunned. Reina pondered over this. If Akira wouldn't even hire her for free, just how little did he think of her? Shiori wasn't pleased with Akira's answer either. She pressed him to reconsider or justify his judgment for her own satisfaction. Akira calmly explained that he found her a huge pain. He elaborated that he'd retract his statement if she could realistically handle killing 50 Urata scorpions and everyone else at checkpoint 14 without breaking a sweat. Reina stuttered. She couldn't pretend to be stronger than she was. Akira cut her off, questioning how well she had thought through picking a fight with those two guys earlier. He asked why she had been so aggressive and if she was sure she could handle them if things turned violent. Reina retorted that she couldn't just let them insult her. Akira was indifferent and told her to do whatever she felt was necessary, as long as she could predict the outcomes and deal with the consequences. He added that letting people walk over her might lead to her death. Sometimes, she might need to pull a gun to show she meant business. What she did previously seemed acceptable to Akira, as long as she was willing to deal with the aftermath. He reiterated his question, asking how she had figured her stunt would play out. Shiori interrupted, stating that if the situation had worsened, she would have done her utmost to restore order. She also found Akira's scenario rather unlikely. Akira agreed that Reina could count on Shiori to settle matters, which he considered a decent plan. He apologized, admitting he thought she was asking about only Reina, not both of them. Shiori quickly retracted her earlier statement and questioned how the ability to kill 50 scorpions and the other hunters was relevant to his answer. Akira explained that it was just an estimate. If Reina could handle that, he figured she could manage the checkpoint alone regardless of what happened. Shiori said that was an extreme reference point, but Akira agreed, shocking Shiori. Akira clarified that most people don't need to worry about such worst-case scenarios, but he did. He wouldn't spend his own money hiring someone who picks unnecessary fights. End of story. He reminded them that he wasn't claiming to be the best. If they disagreed, they could forget about it since it was just his opinion. Shiori accepted this, though she didn't agree with his reasons. She then asked him one last thing. Did he consider how much his answers would upset her? Glaring at him, she questioned if he was prepared to fight her to the death. Akira met her glare, readied his rifle, and responded that since she told him that answering was part of his job and he had taken her money, he figured he needed to be honest with his answers, even if it pissed them off. This confirmed Shiori's suspicion. He was prepared to fight her to the death. Both of them readied themselves, prepared to pull the trigger at any moment. Shiori couldn't believe he was serious. Reina intervened, telling Shiori to stop. Feeling despondent, she begged Shiori to quit. This made Shiori feel pity for her. Alpha sighed at how the situation had escalated. Akira immediately said he hadn't started the fight. Although Alpha had advised him to think for himself, not even her processing power could predict the outcome. She teased Akira, saying he didn't have to try so hard to surprise her. Akira apologized. As time passed, what had happened made things awkward for everyone, and Reina remained silent, feeling bad about what Akira had said earlier. Akira noticed Reina's discomfort and wondered if it was too late to ask if making them happy was part of his job. Should he have told a little white lie? Alpha agreed that if avoiding conflict was his priority, a white lie might have been useful, but commitment to doing his job well was even more important. As one of his clients, she approved of his stance. Akira then spotted something in the shadows. He approached it cautiously with his rifle ready. Alpha identified it as a dead Urata scorpion. Akira asked if it wasn't faking and noticed that the scorpions he had fought above ground were much smaller than this one. He thought that if the others had left a trail, they could follow it to their nest. Alpha pointed out that a large swarm of scorpions had passed through that area. Reina noticed Akira moving away from checkpoint 15, which puzzled them since her sensors didn't detect anything in that direction. As they followed Akira, they found a large hole in the wall. What was inside shocked them the most. Cheryl kicked off a new business venture, dragging Katsuragi into her scheme with her winning business plan. She'd invested the million aurum from selling part of their turf as seed money. With several suppliers on board, she was all set. Today was the big launch. Akira had splurged 1,000,000 aurum to settle with Shijima, so Cheryl planned to repay him with interest. Operation Hot Sandwich Stand was officially a go. Ario noticed that Arisia smelled fantastic, thanks to some fancy soap the boss had recommended. Arisia, now revitalized and barely recognizing her own reflection, was embarrassed but grateful. She wondered why the boss wanted them looking so fabulous. Suddenly, Cheryl appeared, freshly cleaned up and on a mission. She yanked them to the wasteland, declaring, "Let's make them buy." Cheryl rallied her team, explaining that their new base in the wasteland was the perfect spot to attract customers. She proudly announced they would be selling hot sandwiches. This was the real reason she made them clean up and flash their best smiles. The sandwiches were priced at a whopping 980 aurum each. Ario raised an eyebrow, wondering who in the wasteland would pay that much for a sandwich. But Cheryl was confident they'd succeed, and her team had no choice but to roll with it. Ario, who was on a skipping meals diet, was practically drooling as he clutched a sandwich. Cheryl motivated him with the promise of a gourmet experience. When he got the go-ahead, he devoured the sandwich like a starved wolf, munching, chomping, and moaning in delight. The other hunters nearby were stunned, and before long, they were clamoring for their own sandwiches. The operation was a runaway hit. Cheryl, ever the innovator, started decorating the sandwiches with sauce for fun, which customers seemed to love. It was like sandwich art. Each one was a masterpiece. Ario found the whole thing a bit surreal but couldn't deny the success. As Cheryl basked in her sandwich empire's glory, she daydreamed about Akira being awestruck by her success. In her fantasy, he was blown away by her earning 1.5 million orum and enveloped her in a bear hug of gratitude. Meanwhile, Ario and Arisia peeked into Cheryl's room and caught her hugging an imaginary Akira.